Now, I ain't saying she's a gold digger, but she ain't messing with the broke. Oh, hey, everybody. How's it going? We're here today again doing another video about Scott Davis. So, sorry to my MAM subscribers, but we will be returning with a Making a Murderer video soon. But today we wanted to talk a little bit more about Scott Davis. Because quite frankly, I find this fascinating. Sad, but fascinating as to how these things can happen. I mean, it's amazing. Today we're going to look into Scott's ex-wife, Megan Bruton. Sorry, she insists that it's pronounced Megan, so we'll say Megan. So Megan Bruton, you know, she's pretty interesting. She is somehow seen as credible in the court, but I mean, if you basically don't take into account anything about her, then maybe you could believe that. But you know, I really am not going to here to fault her about her lifestyle. I personally don't really care how she lives her life, but when she gets wrapped up in somebody getting put in prison for murder, when there's no physical evidence to tie him to it, there's no witness accounts to tie him to it, there's no, you know, anything to really tie Scott Davis to it. But yet, because she claims that Scott did it and essentially lies about telling Scott that David was shot. Now, we're going to get into that in this video. She actually tells Scott that David was shot. So David got that information from her. When detectives asked her, because when he said that, the detective said, "How could you know that?" He said, "Well, Megan told me." And when they went and asked Megan about it, she said, "No, Scott told me." Well, you'll see in this video the proof that that is an absolute lie. Beyond that, we're also going to see her outlook on life, the way she sees things, and the way that she has conducted herself up to now, or at least up until the 2005 trial. But anyways, so we'll start out with her college. So, all right, so while in college, she was attending college and she flunks out. And kind of, I guess, early on, because she continued for a couple years to take her parents' tuition money for college, even though she had flunked out. So that's pretty despicable, kind of, you know, on its own. But then add to that she wanted to continue to deceive her parents, because she was supposed to have graduated after like a year or two. She was married to Scott for like a year or two, and she was supposed to be graduating from college. She asked Scott to forge a diploma for her, and he refused. But that's how far she was willing to take it. I mean, that's just, you know, I'm not here saying, you know, burn the witch or anything. I'm not here going, you know, like, hang her high. Nuh-uh. Just saying that somebody with that type of mentality, you know, clearly money ruled everything around her. Clearly that's the way she was. That's just, you know, the way she was wired. And which is fine. But as I said, when we move into the seriousness of a murder investigation and being able to take the word of somebody like this, like the gospel, that's where I have a little bit of a problem. So, and you'll see why. I mean, because we can prove that she's the one that said it to Scott, and you'll see that in this video. So then, while she's married to Scott, she is seeing two men who live in New York. One of them is a 50-year-old billionaire, and the other one is a well-to-do doctor. And she would, you know, periodically fly to New York to see these men. She would tell Scott she was going other places, like, you know, to see like friends or whatever in a different state or whatever, but she would actually go to, like, you know, New York and see these guys. And, you know, And then you also add to that, she was seeing David Coffin. So she was seeing 3 other guys while she was married to Scott. Now, am I saying that that's damning? That, or anything? No, not. Just saying it speaks to the kind of character that she has. That's all I'm saying. So, then we move on to the fact that she often told her friend Jennifer, Jen, or Jen J as she's referred to in these, statements. She told her friend Jen that she wanted to be a kept woman. I mean, it's not surprising. I mean, you see the kind of men she's gravitating to, men that have a few coins to rub together. So, I mean, so you can kind of see how she's wired. Like I said, more power to her, but this kind of shows that she has a dishonest streak and a, wanting to have it on easy streak. So, then you move on to the facts that while testifying at trial, she was under specific orders. The court had specifically ordered that she was not to discuss the case. While she was testifying. She testified for 4 days. She wasn't supposed to talk about the case anywhere. When she would leave court for the day, she would send emails to a popular crime blog at the time. And basically, giving things about the case that aren't supposed to be public knowledge. And she was doing it like as aliases. She didn't do it as herself. She did it as aliases. Eventually, somebody subpoenaed all the IP addresses and all that stuff, and found out that all these things were all done by her, from her IP address in Australia, and also from, I think, her aunt's house, where her aunt and some of her family were also posting. So that's the kind of loose morals that she has. I mean, there's even a statement that she was actually hoping that some of the jurors would get curious and go onto that blog and see what she had put. She was hoping she could sway opinion, like the jurors' opinion and stuff. Like she actually said that she hoped that. Mind you, ordered by the court not to talk about the case. So, this is disturbing, but it also speaks to that streak of dishonesty that's in her, and it also speaks to her credibility, because if she doesn't respect the court and she can't keep herself from talking about the case when she's not supposed to, I mean, it's just ridiculous. So that's basically the whole leading up for her. And now we're going to show you a video, and this video is going to basically walk you through the sequence of events that happened the night that this all it's going to walk you through what happened that night when this all happened. You're going to find out how the phone calls happened. You're going to find out that about Megan calling her friend Jen. You're going to find out about Megan calling Scott. You're going to find out about the witnesses that saw this happen and stuff like that. So here we go, and afterwards I'll come back and talk to you shortly.
Wouldn't it therefore, though, it makes sense that if Megan did in fact tell Scott and the others that evening, and that she was the first to say that, shouldn't she be considered a suspect?
Oh yeah, but the only thing is, when Joe Disley, when we did the phone records,
Yeah.
the phone records, from my understanding, way back, because we gave over Joe Burford.
Well, let me tell you this. The evidence that Megan was first to dissolve Coffin was shot, and I promise you what I'm going to tell you here is true. Jennifer Genakova, her last name is spelled Jenacova, Jennifer Genakova. She was Megan's best friend. She confirmed that Megan called her at 12:08 a.m. that first night from the Coffin neighbor's house, the Limburgers, Limberger house, from the Limburgers house. And Megan she stated that Coffin was shot in the head. And Jennifer Jenifikova and her husband were so shocked that they wrote a note, a contemporaneous note that morning, memorializing those words of Megan and the time that was on the microwave and the answering machine. And the first time Scott and Megan spoke that evening was in fact 10 minutes later, after Megan had called her friend. When Megan called Scott at his house, it was at 12:18 a.m., exactly 10 minutes later. This is verified by the phone records. On this call, she told Scott that David is dead. He was shot. This is when Scott was told as he stated. How do we know this is true? Craig Foster, David's best friend and Craig's girlfriend, heard Megan say exactly what Scott claimed. They were standing next to Megan when she called Scott and told him this. They were confused themselves.
I understand him.
Yeah. They were confused. This Craig Foster and his girlfriend, they had been confused themselves that evening at how could she possibly have known this. This is verified in an Atlanta police interview with Craig Foster and his girlfriend. Foster also testified to this in court and in fact stated that he told Detective Chambers that first evening that Megan had told Scott this. That was testified in court. And Megan, then she changed her story and told both the Jenikovas and the Assistant District Attorney Joe Buford, that she might have in fact told Scott Coffin was shot. This was just a few days after the murder. And then District Attorney Powell Howard verified this, that this had happened when he testified in court. And that was in 2006. And it was about a year after the murder, later, when Megan completely changes her story again and says that Scott had told her Coffin was shot. This was after the huge reward was offered from the Coffin family. And in addition to the fact her changing stories are very suspicious, no evidence whatsoever supports this version, and it is fact impossible based on the timing of the calls as documented by phone records and the testimony of the Jenikovas. The Jenikovas had no motive to lie and in fact have every reason to support Megan since Jennifer Jenifikova and Megan were best friends. The Jenikovas also had no way of knowing that first day how important the timing of Megan's call was. It seems clear to me that Megan was lying and somehow had guilty knowledge. This is what is supported by the evidence, but it seems no one on the prosecution team bothered to investigate it. I want to ask you a question because I thank your honesty, and I want to know you're honest, and I want to know the truth. If Megan in fact knew and divulged first that Coffin had been shot in the head, and in fact if she did tell Scott to this before anyone else knew this, wouldn't it be true that Megan is either guilty or at least a real suspect?
Well, of course.
Okay. And to be fair, this is what everyone claimed made Scott the killer. If Megan was in fact the one who told Scott and the others, as evidence clearly shows, don't you agree she could be guilty or somehow involved?
Well, that's what Joe Bruton was saying later on, once he got off the case.
And now we will move into the audio clip of Jennifer J's testimony, who was Megan's best friend.
This conversation that I had with him was the second phone call at 12:08. She said, "Oh my God, David is dead. The burglars came back. His house is burning. He's been shot in the head."
So we have Jennifer J., who places her call from Megan calling her at 12:08. Here we have the phone records proving that Megan called Scott at 12:18, 10 minutes after she had told Jen that David was shot in the head. So that's pretty, the phone records, you can't deny that. Megan Bruton was the first one to divulge that he was shot. She told Scott. How would she get this information? Okay, so there you have it, folks. Right there. The phone records, everything points in one direction. It points at Megan. I would also say, in regards to her friend Jen. Now, this woman, Jen J., she is Megan's friend. They've been friends since childhood. They were in each other's weddings. They're friends. But I get the impression that maybe Jen feels that Megan is kind of a difficult friend to bear. It seems like she when she heard Megan talking about David being shot in the head, when she was over at the next door neighbor's house, calling from the next door neighbors while the house was still burning, I can imagine that might have made her think. It might have made her wonder. It would have made me wonder. How'd you know that when there was a fire? So, and Megan never offered. When asked, Megan just got silent when she got asked about how she would know that. So, I'm sorry, but all the indicators point to dishonesty with her. But I just get the feeling that Jen J just no longer could stand by on the sideline and co-sign on Megan's BS. That's really just the way it looks to me. So, and besides Jen J and her husband, who, heard Megan say it, you also have two other people who are actually standing next to Megan when she called Scott. And the interesting thing there, people, is you can't try to say that person was sympathetic to Scott, because that person seriously would not have been sympathetic to Scott, and here's why. Because David Foster was David Coffin's best friend. They were really good friends. So, trust me, David Foster had no predisposition to want to help Scott. Right? Okay. So that's important. You got these witnesses coming forward saying she said this to Scott, and it got buried. It just got ignored. So, you got to imagine this is why they dropped the case in the first place. And then when it came to the second time around, they just wanted to bury those statements, or try to. I don't know. It's outrageous to me. It's clear that from the, like I said, the phone records, the witness accounts, that Megan fed this information to Scott, and then just denied, and just basically just denied. So, like I said, I'm not critical of the lifestyle that she chose. More power to her. My problem is she is obviously lying. She is not credible, and she should have never been believed to be credible. And one other thing. Anybody who's watched my Ryan Hilligas video from Making a Murderer, what is rule number 1 in the rule book in, Murder Investigation 101? What's the number 1 rule? Always look at the people closest to the victim first. Always. Never just casually pass over them. And there's a reason why. Because 9 times out of 10, they tend to either be involved or know something. Yeah. So, it's always to me an earmark of a potential wrongful conviction when you see stuff like that happen. Ignoring of potential suspects, ignoring of the obvious potential suspects. So, along with many other earmarks. But so that's about it for today, folks. I just wanted to get that out there and show that has been totally proven that information was fed to Scott. And if the information was fed to Scott, then the whole base for the state's case falls out, because that's what the detectives, the DA, Miss Ross, the crime shows that covered it, all said, yeah, he was guilty, because he knew he was shot. Well, he knew that because Megan knew it. Do the math. Anyways, that's it, guys. We'll see you later. That's it for now, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks. And I just wanted to say thank you to my friend Susan for helping me out with this video.